Hello, respected viewers. It's George Mylan. So here you see the book. Anyway, this is Congo Mercenary by the late and unlamented Mike Hoare. He died at the age of 100 in 2020. So here he is, a dapper little man, born to Irish parents in Calcutta, India, now Kolkata. So, and not too much background, but anyway, he went to boarding school in Great Britain. I don't think he ever visited Ireland. And then he was there. Um, joined the British Army just before the Second World War, served through that, rose to the rank of major, serving in Burma, now Myanmar, returned to London, worked as an accountant, got fed up with the dullness of monochrome post-war Britain, shifted to South Africa. He was a car salesman, and then became a mercenary in the early 60s. So the Belgian Congo became independent in 1960, very quickly devolved into civil war, partly because of premature independence, but also because of the meddling of other countries, the Soviet Union, arguably Belgium, the United States, and so on. But so he came in, and we call him a mercenary, but he was actually working for the legitimate Congolese government of President Kasavubu. Now, you might dislike Kasavubu, but he was recognized as the rightful president of Congo. So there he was. He had to hire these soldiers because the eastern half of Congo had fallen to communist-inspired guerrillas, so he was determined to fight them. Now, he professed to loathe communists, Hoare, but he realized, as most of his men, the mercenaries, were mercenary in actuation and didn't know or care about ideology, would quite willingly have fought for the other side had they been offered enough filthy lucre. So where was he going to find 600 trained soldiers? Mostly in armies. Well, he couldn't recruit there because they're not allowed to go AWOL. So he recruited in South Africa and Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, but he recruited exclusively white men. He claimed not to be racist. Indeed, he did have black friends, and they often served alongside black units, but his unit was all white. And some of them were racist, were white supremacist. They were white South Africans, or they were British, they were German, Italian, Greek, Spanish, Romanian, all sorts of nationalities, were preponderantly Anglophones who had some sort of connection to Africa, to the erstwhile British Empire there. But it's he can really write. I was actually kind of surprised, and he was surprisingly personable, but really conscienceless. He felt no qualms whatsoever about killing people. He mentioned that his gang of cutthroats, they very often looted. He did nothing about that. He did object to rape, though. He talked about the horrific atrocities committed by his foes. I wonder, was some of this invented? Was it overstated? Were the numbers inflated? Was it sometimes not quite as ghastly as he claimed? I don't doubt that at least a bit of it is true. But I'll read you some sections of his writing to show his way with words, because, he's a great narrator and he's surprisingly articulate. I was met at the gate by Jerry Purin, who maneuvered me through the formalities with an astonishing flow of bad but effective French. He addressed all Congolese officials as chef or monsieur le directeur. Jerry knew his Congo. He had not changed much in the 3 years since I'd seen him last, and he was now a good-looking 40, tall and well-dressed, with a confident air which exactly matched his bow tie and cheroot. So he paints numerous pen portraits which is very pleasing, and so he talks about Alistair Wicks, a mercenary who died rather young. Alistair Wicks and a small group of pilots whom Purin had brought up from South Africa with him. The only one I knew was Alistair, whom I'd not seen since our last adventures in Katanga in 1961, when we had formed a loose but lasting friendship. I was happy to see that the years between had done nothing to mar his handsome features, perhaps another grey hair or two, but he was the same debonair charmer with the same well-modulated voice and Harrow accent and the same impeccable manners, and so on. He's very amusing. And one of the phrases keeps coming up, it went hard with me and so on. And at one point he writes, I am not a soft man. Indeed, he's not. So he's willing to put himself in harm's way again and again. He had no conscience about killing the enemy, and said some of them joined just because everybody was joining. He said he abominated African nationalists and communists and regretted he hadn't killed more, but never seemed to ask himself why an African might be a nationalist, or why a communist, and why they might not want Kasavubu's government and Mobutu was maneuvering himself into the presidency. Mobutu, one of the world's most notorious kleptocrats. overthrew Kasavubu and took over. And there was a certain rough justice, and there was some law and order in Mobutu in the early days. As they say, there was only one person to pay because there's only one thief in the whole of the Congo, and that was the president. But this doesn't seem to have troubled Hoare's conscience whatsoever. Hoare was Hoare by name and Hoare by nature for anyone who would pay him. So retired to South Africa, lived out the rest of his life in Durban. I'm surprised the government, government after apartheid didn't prosecute him for various things. Obviously, later on, he tried to overthrow the lawful government of the Seychelles and got a few years in prison for hijacking an aircraft and so on. And this is what he has to say about ladies of the night in Leopoldville, now Kinshasa. The Congolese ladies of the town would saunter into the Memling bar to see what was cooking. They were a collection of the most remarkable dolls I've ever seen. They were exceptionally well dressed. Overdressed, I suppose, would be a more accurate description. Some had on gold lame knee-length dresses, which must have cost a fortune, whilst others wore tight satin jobs cut deliberately to accentuate the goods. One usually wore a full silver gown, imprudently décolleté, which imperiled her treasures every time she bent down. The creations were stunning and would have induced an instant thrombosis in any Paris couturier. In a word, they were the sort of dress every man likes to see on a woman, providing she's not his wife. So there are plenty of drolleries in here. He used rather antiquated phrase of the first importance and things like that. So it's mostly got pace. It does get bogged down in the particulars of some military campaigns later on. But then again, what did you expect? It is a book about fighting. Then it's got this sort of handwritten note from Joseph Désiré Mobutu, and then I think the chief of staff of the Congolese army, subsequently the self-made president. And this was the advertisement he posted in a Johannesburg newspaper seeking recruits for his mercenary outfit. Any fit young man looking for employment with a difference at a salary well in excess of 100 per month should telephone this number during business hours. Employment initially offered for 6 months. Immediate start. It didn't say that it had to be white, but he only recruited whites. So it seems to be racialist to me. And so, yeah, that was it. And most of them had military experience. Some of them didn't. He said he got some real deadbeats. He had to get rid of the dead wood, the habitual drunkards, the dope fiends, and so on. Some people were kicked out for being homosexual and so on. He claims he wasn't anti-gay, but thought they were bad for military discipline. Indeed, there was such homophobia, probably best for their own safety, that they were booted out at the time. So I would thoroughly recommend it to you. I read it twice through, and it's got some fascinating turns of phrases. So it's actually a rather enjoyable read, despite some of the horrific things he talks about. So it really was a monstrous what people got up to, killing each other, killing civilians, often in particularly sadistic ways. So that's it. It's a vanished world. The Congo as it was, Zaire as it became, the Democratic Republic of the Congo as it is again. And there are films about him. That film, The Wild Geese, is based on him. Because of the Irish wild geese who went abroad as condottieri in the 17th century, he had them wearing wild geese flashes on their shoulders, uniforms for his men. He insisted on military discipline, church parade, shaving daily, and so on, differentiating himself from the men under his command. So I'd warmly recommend that to you. Right. Thank you very much. And don't mistake that for any admiration or approval for the crimes he committed. Goodbye, everyone.